Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music Center, not in San Antonio. We're in beautiful St. Louis, Missouri, here at the wonderful Clayton Studios with the phenomenal Michael Silverman. And I promise I'm not going to talk a whole lot on this video because I'm going to turn it over to Michael and he's going to talk about some people and he's going to play about some of these voicing examples we had. But to start it off, it's mostly going to be about piano solos and solo piano kind of stuff, but this is part of the video that I want to make sure you get early on. Michael's going to talk about some of the big name people he's recorded with, he's performed with, and has done shows with, and even crossed paths with and met. And this is a phenomenal storyteller right here. So we're going to get, well, it's just phenomenal to people. No.
I got you.
So if you don't want to talk first, you want to play, go right ahead.
Well,
it's
no.
I'm just here to listen and bounce off.
We were talking about, how, I got to the opportunity to play with some great people, and I think it started in maybe 2012, 2013. My brother and I just got on a mission to get to play with Eric Marienthal on a recording. So Eric Marienthal, we knew him from the Chick Corea Electric Band, but also his own solo career and playing with Jeff Lorber and playing with the Rippingtons and the Yellow Jackets and all my favorite groups, coming up. And I just always had this dream. In fact, I wrote music for years, imagining him playing it, but I didn't ever think it would happen. But anyway, we just tracked down a guy who knew a guy.
I know a guy that knows a guy.
Yeah.
And call him because he knows a guy.
Yeah, and so actually it was when we spoke with Billy Halting, who is the percussionist with Dweezil Zappa's group. He had kind of a side business where he since he knew all the cool LA cats, he would hook people up with the players so that they could work when they weren't busy. And of course, Eric was always busy, but he was nice enough to agree to take a listen to our music. And once Eric and I got on the phone, we became fast friends. And we had him do a number of recordings for us. And
wonderful.
It was incredible. And then he came out and flew out to St. Louis and played with us, and I believe it was 2013 was the first time we played with him on stage, and we played a lot of his music. He played some of our music, and it was just a dream come true. And we've been really good friends ever since.
Wonderful.
And he flies out a couple, sometimes 3-4 times a year to play with us, either in St. Louis or some other places.
Right.
Different jazz festivals and things. And one of the things he did right away was he said, "Man, if you ever want to play with anybody that I know, and which is everybody, just let me know." And so we ended up doing things with John Patitucci.
Oh, yeah.
And Jeff Lorber, and David Benoit, and eventually it just, that kind of grew. The more we knew people, the more we knew people who knew people, and we did stuff with Steve Gadd and Dave Weckl and Dweezil Zappa and Jennifer Batten and on and on. And I could just go on and on, but just all the cats. So we've gotten to play with a lot of wonderful people. And so, yeah, it's been kind of a dream come true. And that part of the music career is probably my favorite thing. I mean, just playing with people. And
it must have been cool to hear that.
And just to butter you up a little bit, I've been watching your videos for a long time.
Oh, really?
And,
great, I appreciate that.
So when you come walking through my studio door, I'm like, this is weird, It's very, very cool that
the guy's actually here.
Yeah, it's very cool. So it's nice to meet you and get to talk to you like this.
Yeah, and then you're going to be wondering, like, what do you got to do to get rid of this guy? He's been camping out for a week and a half here, man.
That's great, man, and it's so cool. So the reason that you're here, just to be on a little bit of a tangent, is because the Kawai Piano Fest in St. Louis is happening. So you guys are in town for that. My brother and I helped organize it.
That's the concert video we're shooting.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yes. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. So
it's going to be wonderful. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. It was a thrilling weekend for us. We get to bring a road show home and come here and get it, which is absolutely wonderful.
Right.
Now, we were talking before, like I had mentioned Jim Brickman, and which you really could meet anytime you want. I mean, you've got a guy that's like your best bud right there on top of him. You already know.
So, yeah.
But it's just kind of interesting, though, because Jim and George Winston And there's another guy that I absolutely love and forgot to mention to you before is David Lawns, and I know you must have listened to some of David Lawns stuff. And he's
Oh no, I love his stuff.
oh he's
Love it.
he's just got that. I mean,
One of my biggest
melodic
influences when I was
touch.
younger. Yeah, Christopher's Dream and the whole thing.
Oh yes, it's
Wonderful.
just wonderful thought out compositions, you
Yeah.
know. And then the thing like with Christopher's Dream is he does the solo piano version, then he does the live version
Yeah.
where Return to Heart is one of my favorite solo piano
Yeah.
albums in the world.
Oh, yeah,
I think,
yeah.
I think he hit it out of the park with that album.
That's
because
beautiful.
He
Yeah.
played
That's my
so many
favorite, probably.
different pianos in different rooms in the ideal environment. I mean,
Right.
it's just right there in Middle Europe, and just got all those pianos in those wonderful places. And I thought, this guy right here has lived the dream, and
Yeah.
he made it happen. And I was just so thrilled with that album when it came out,
Yeah.
because the sound quality was so perfect that you could tell it's the same guy playing different instruments in different rooms, and that's what makes it like a visit to Europe.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful what he did with that album.
It is. And when I was a piano teacher, I used to teach Return to the Heart and all that
That's
stuff.
a lovely thing.
So
But
good.
That leads me to the question: is you had said I had mentioned something about voicing. You said, "Oh, I like these," and it's
Yeah,
just like
sure.
4, 5, 1, and it's all mixed up. It's not in the same order. And I told you I always kind of
Right.
put my stuff with the kind of keep at least one of the notes in the root. But you do stuff like. It isn't anything I would ever reach for, which is what I love listening
Well,
to.
yeah,
So,
I thought this is something I'd love to talk about, is these kinds of open voicings. In fact, my father was the first one to teach me about these. He didn't teach me a lot at the piano my whole life. We talked about music my whole life, but he didn't really talk about music theory that much. He talked about the world of music, or what music, phrasing. He talked in those sort of lofty, abstract terms all the time. But he did sit down one time, and he wasn't a piano player, he was a cellist. But he showed me, like, if you take a C major chord, and this is a pretty major thing for me, and you just do something like where you break out any of the notes, like, say, take the middle note, E, and you move that up an octave, you get, right? So it's like that tenth sound. So sometimes,
yes,
we
yeah.
were talking about tenths earlier. But this chord is moving things around with that kind of distance between notes is always a really pretty sound. And when you orchestrate for strings and so on, you pretty much don't ever play. I mean, you wouldn't. You would play. Yeah, because then everything has some space around it. The notes have space around them. And that's the way I think of it. So, we're talking about just taking like a 1-4-5 progression. One of my favorite things about opening up the voicings is you could make the root, the third or the fifth, your bass, right? So, let's just take 1-4-5 and C, which is C, F, G. I spend a lot of time. There's a third of the bass on an F chord. The F chord, play the A in the bass, B in the bass for a G chord. So my becomes, and so here and there I might, double octaves, or very often I'll also add a ninth or a second, depending on it. And then it becomes a Lyle Mays kind of a thing, right?
And you know what's
And
fascinating?
this is just C, F, and G, and I'm already
Is
thrilled to be playing it,
You're hitting a total of 5 notes there? 4.
Sometimes 3,
Sometimes.
maybe 4. Yeah.
But it sounds like more.
Yeah. It's the interaction, I think, between the notes.
It is.
And it's a funny thing. I was just thinking about this the other day on the synthesizer. You even get more of this. Or if you record it and put a lot of compression on it, and you get saturation, you get all these extra harmonics on every note.
Right.
You end up hearing a whole lot more notes than are there. And so you don't need to play a lot of notes on the instrument. And so these are 3-note chords.
God, that's so juicy and good sounding, man.
Yeah. So one of the things I've realized that one of the fundamental things that happens in a lot of my original music is this: since 1, 4, and 5 chords are so common, And then if you think about C major and its relative, what would be its relative major if it were in C minor? That's the way I think of it. So a step and a half higher would be E flat, right? So it relates to the C in that way. Like if you had C minor, it would be relative to E flat major. Now I play 1, 4, 5 and E flat. And now you have 6 chords. Those 6 chords you could play for eternity because
I mean, you can climb up and go down the same way on those same... Exactly. Isn't that cool?
And so that was just C, F, G, and the 1, 4, 5 and E flat. Just, and that's, so, I mean, there's infinite melodies there. So, anyway, that's just one of the things I like to think about and to show people. And we're not even talking about jazz chords. We're talking about,
but they sound like it.
Fairly, so yeah, there's a certain kind of jazz, but I'm really interested in that open sound. I think Lyle Mays was interested in that.
Yeah.
Bruce Hornsby does that a lot, you know. And of course these guys use 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, of course, but that sound is what really grabs me. David Lanz and George Winston and those guys, they're much more strict about keeping it very, very clean with triads.
Right,
and I love the sound.
Right. No, that is really a cool sound. The other thing I'm thinking is like, you know, Lyle, like you mentioned, Lyle Mays opens it up.
Yeah.
And that's because he knows that it's either going to be him or the other dude's going to put a solo in there. They're going to put a solo instrument in there. And that's what's really neat about opening that up and leaving that space so there's room for another musician to come in there and say, you think you sound cool now, wait till you hear my instrument on top of it.
Yeah.
Which is neat, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of opens up the way. And, you know, Dave Grusin does that a lot in his composition. That one there. And especially, was that Heaven Can Wait? Mm-hmm. Because he had, that guy was had a soprano sax that he played, or was it a clarinet?
I can't remember.
I think it was a soprano sax.
Okay.
And it's where Warren Beatty plays a guy that kind of gets kicked out of heaven because he was not a nice guy. He needs to go back and earn some more brownie points.
Right.
And he gets stuck in the wrong guy's body.
Right. And I can't think of the exact melody, but On Golden Pond was the same kind of thing as what I'm playing right here.
Yeah.
But they were like, or something like this, you know.
Right.
And it had that kind of, I'm not even close to the tune, but that's the essence of what it is. Yeah, I can't even think of how. But in my memory is that it was all those open chords like that.
Yeah. And let me ask you, those are what are those called in theory? Those open sixths. They call them fifth and sixth because they change based on how you flip the chord position one from the other.
Well, the third and the sixth and the fourth and the fifth flip, right? So yeah, you end up with a
sixth.
That's a sixth there. Right, and now they're not all six.
No, they're not, but they vary. Is what I'm saying. But
you keep the spacing similar, and then you're hearing individual voices moving, instead of like, you know, you don't really hear individual voices there. But here,
so kind of like you cut the middle out of the right hand and put it up there, and then take the bottom out of here and kind of put it in the middle.
Exactly. And yet it sounds like you don't hear it flipping, which is what's actually happening. If you theoretically break down the chords, you hear things moving in lines, which is what grabs the ear. That's
what you showed is a line that you can make it move up or down,
right?
Based on whatever the screenplay says you need to do it that way.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Have you done that? Have you soundtracked any film footage yet?
You know, I've done. Yeah. Well, I used to do a lot of jingles, and a lot of short films and documentaries and things like that. And I've had a lot of music placed in films, but I didn't score those. But it would be like
someone took it and put it in there.
Yeah, and that's
cool.
That's become a big part of our business lately is sync licensing.
How many seconds did they take? I have to ask because I know they don't buy your whole 2-minute song. They only take like 50 seconds or 44 seconds or.
You'd be surprised.
Oh, really?
Because American Horror Story, they took one of my tunes that was only 3 minutes and somebody took my arrangement and stretched it almost to the entire show.
Whoa, they liked
Yeah.
it.
I mean,
Okay.
and I don't know even who did that. I would love to meet the guy who did it, but it was done different ways. But it was my arrangement of
That's neat.
Carol of the
Nifty.
Bells.
Wow.
And so that was cool. And then another time I did a thing that they used in 2.5 Men, and that was a long sequence. That was like I think it was which was actually Pop Goes the Weasel.
Yeah.
Do you hear that?
Uh-huh.
So that's
I did.
what
I
it
was
is.
going to say, you keep going. I'm going to nail that one. I was thinking Spider at the moment,
So-
but
Didn't that
Well,
Pop
did-
Goes the Weasel? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's it. Well, that's something that Charlie would have played anyway, if you
Yeah.
think about it.
Right,
Because
right.
he was the kid song.
That's right. He was a jingle guy.
Well,
In the
he
show,
did Charlie
too.
Waffles.
Yeah.
Remember, he
That's
had
right.
a
He
TV
did that
show.
too. Yeah. And so, but they had a whole. It was in one of their finale.
I remember they had some gorgeous piano parts
Yeah.
in there, and sometimes I thought, I wonder who does that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple episodes I probably read your name go by, and
Yeah,
and
it
it
could
just
be.
went, didn't mean anything because I don't know the guy.
Right,
I'm
right.
watching a show.
Right. And there was one time on The Good Wife where they used one of my Bach arrangements, and it wasn't just in the background. It was in the scene. And I don't know the main characters' names, but woman hands the guy a CD, and it's actually my music. They put it in, and then they dance to it through the end of the show, and it's like it goes on and on. I'm like, this is just amazing. You never imagine where music's going to end up,
Yeah,
So
no, that's
it was-
fascinating.
It was just so that stuff is really
So
fun.
now, did you market directly to those people? They just found you someplace. They were one
A lot
of
of
your
that-
billion of downloads
right,
from Spotify.
right, exactly. Those they found, and then they
The
did a
film
sync
dudes
license.
found you there,
Yeah.
and then got a hold of you, and hey, that's really cool, man.
Most of those I found out about after the fact because I have someone who does publishing rights
all right,
for
someone
me.
went-
And then you go, oh my gosh, are
Hey,
you
you
serious?
need to go look for some money over there because you're gonna find some.
Right, right.
And it's all yours. It's been there. You
Exactly.
just got to go get it.
Right. So it's all
That's a
it's-
beautiful thing, man. It's
Yeah.
better than checks in the mail because they probably send it to like e-commerce. So there it
Right,
is the
yeah.
next day.
Yeah, it just shows up every quarter,
That's great.
So yeah, it's been good.
Wonderful.
But anyway, so that's just a little taste of what I am intrigued about in voicing, and I find that I'm not really. I don't even think of myself as a jazz musician. I think, but guys like Lyle Mays, you think, well, he's clearly a jazz musician. But I think these guys are on a new. There's something that needs a new word. It's not new age. It's not jazz. It's like
It's not classical.
It's not classical.
It's not classical. It's not new age. It's not jazz.
I guess labels
What
are
is
always
it?
a problem.
It,
But
it's not really solo piano
right.
because piano solo. Hey, would you like to go to a piano recital tonight? No, that sounds dull and boring.
Right. I don't. I'm
I
not that
want
interested
laser
in
lights and shows and a
Right.
big screen TV.
Right.
Big screen with laser light and a lot of wattage.
Right.
I want to feel it.
Right.
And those, once you've been to a couple, rock shows or rock concerts or Broadway musicals or something like I don't want to go see a guy sit at the piano for hours on end.
Right.
That's a thin audience. Maybe I'm wrong. Some people do enjoy it. And I've sold
do, sure,
tickets.
of course
And
they
it's like, I can't believe people come there. Why? Sometimes the worst thing is when you're up there playing, it's like, God, I hope they're not finding me boring.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have to ask you a question because we've mentioned and we've played around a couple things. Do you have a favorite classical composer or one that you kind of lean toward or one that you think is kind of like
Well-
Lord and Master of the realm of...
Well, that's a pretty obvious question. If you know, my group is called Bach to the Future.
Right.
So I love Bach. But
Understood.
really, Bach is a certain mood that I'm in where I want to listen to Bach, of course. But he was just amazing, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't even need to tell the world how great Bach was. But,
Right.
But I love it all. I like a lot of Beethoven, and I like a lot of what I think of as contemporary classical composers, which are really the film guys.
Mm-hmm.
I like Thomas Newman a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Me too.
I like Danny Elfman. I like some of the guys who were a little bit further back in the early film stuff, and like Aaron Copland was actually a film composer. the stuff he did for film was some of my favorite.
But he had those big open sixth and fifth chords.
Yeah.
Like John Barry types in the low brass.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Cellos. That's nice, big, fat, tons of vibrations and notes with chords with hardly any notes. Just
Right.
like what you were doing there.
Right.
Different instruments playing the same thing.
Right. Of course, I like Adagio for Strings is probably the greatest piece that was ever written for anything.
Have you ever heard it with voices?
Yeah.
Have
That's
you ever
haunting.
heard it with this guy Higginbotham at the Oxford Boys Choir?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Those albums, Agnus Dei 1 and 2, and they're just phenomenal.
I'm sure.
And he's got that piece on there.
So that guy, Eric Whitaker, is kind of writing that kind of stuff now. Are you familiar with his stuff? But it sounds like that. It sounds like it's real choral. And
You know, I have to
but
tell you
he's a
something.
contemporary guy, yeah.
There was one piece of music that I actually looked at the chart, and it's beautiful. You look at it, but it's not anything out of the ordinary. It's just, but it leads you to go to the next step is, but this music arranged and produced that way was Jonathan Elias's work on the prayer cycle. And this is about a 22-year-old thing. that
I'm not
talking about.
familiar
You're
with
not
it.
familiar
Okay.
with it.
Yeah.
I'll hook you up with
Okay,
it. And
sounds
because
good.
it's just the basic kind of thing that we're talking about, but the arrangements are just incredible. And then all the languages are mixed up. It's all a lot. There's one song in English, the rest of it all. It's like a world album.
That's
phenomenal
cool.
piece of music. Yeah, it really is wonderful.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, because we're going to be continuing shooting some more video, and we're going to be getting some more concert footage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What is your kind of future that you see the piano? Because here's the thing, you mentioned, and the reason why I asked, okay,
Yeah.
is I know that you've got a lot of your recordings, and they're backed up with a lot of sheet music sales. But here's the thing: have you ever given any thought to? And the reason why I ask about your favorite classical composer is like Bach. Okay, Bach to the Future is your favorite, but here's the real thing: you have to have someone that is extremely highly motivated in the first place, hundreds of years ago, and ever since then, to go look at those scores that the guy wrote. Because there was no YouTube, there was no vinyl, there was nothing of Bach touching an instrument left to humanity once he was gone.
Sure.
Except those pieces of paper.
Right.
And Chopin and Liszt and those guys left the same kind of paper. Now,
Right.
you're a musician, and you studied piano your whole life. I'm the same way. How long would it take you to learn one of those Bach pieces or Chopin pieces off of their chart?
I mean, it takes me a long time because I'm not a fast reader. But my
have you
ear
seen their
frequent-
charts
yeah.
or copies of them?
Oh, their actual charts? Yeah, they're a mess. Of course they are.
How can
in
they
fact,
attribute that music to those guys on that chart when he's like,
In fact, people are arguing over what the notes are a lot of the time because they're not. There's some.
I mean, you gotta really like a guy to go through all that stuff to typeset music. Have you
Yeah.
ever seen what's involved in typesetting music? Like not now,
sure.
but
Oh,
I mean
back
when they
when they
had
used
when
to
they
put
had
the little things on?
yeah,
Yeah.
when you had like a printer.
Yeah.
That might be a good place for us to stop right now. Printed music, because we're running low on time.
Okay.
And but just think about that, because that gets to me sometimes. I thought, okay, Ted, you think you're a great composer. Are you leaving good enough charts where people can come in and pick up the space and say, I
but
want to
we're
learn that
leaving-
guy's song?
We're leaving recordings though.
You're leaving recordings, which is better than anything they did, number one.
I agree.
And you're
It just
leaving
is.
a chart that's at least now kind of tuned around the same notes.
Right.
Before then, it wasn't even
Right,
that.
that's true.
So we've come a long way in about 300 years.
Right.
And it's just on piano, and it's just amazing that that drive and that ambition comes out of the individual person
Yeah.
that gets bit with this instrument. And that's why I think it's so important. Like, what was your first introduction to the piano? How did it go? What were the milestones? And then, because this is part of your life. It's every day of your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to explain to people. An investment in piano is an investment in the future for the rest of your life. And
That's
those
true.
that are around you. And what greater, easier thing could there be than just celebrating life and music?
Yeah. I could say one more thing on what I think is an interesting thing about the future of what I'm doing and what we're all doing is that the difference is we're not just leaving these things either on paper or just a single recording of our song, but we can watch 8 versions of somebody playing something and they're different and they improvise this way, or they play them slower, or they do different instrumentation, or you heard them early in life and later in life, like Glenn Gould or Elton John, and they've done things, and you realize we're leaving behind a lot more because of these recordings. It's not an individual song recorded once. It's that you can really see what people think about the music at different points in their life, and so it feels less static. It's more interesting that way. So
it's kind of like the end of the recital, you know, when you have the teachers there and everyone's played out their songs and everything, and you heard it all the different ways.
Right, that's true. That's
okay,
true.
you know,
and they're all valid.
Yeah,
Right?
and then you can tell like what the ambiance of the current moment is at the recital based on the songs that everyone played. What
Right.
the hot selling things are.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you,
time
Ted.
this
Really
afternoon and this
appreciate it.
lesson I got here in voicings.
Ah,
and
all right.
again, this is Michael Silverman. We're here at Clayton Studios, and I'm Ted with Alamo Music Center. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you and listening to some of your submissions. We're going to ask for those coming up too. So stick around and thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.